Shri Gurave Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Pancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So welcome everyone today evening. So as I mentioned on the group, we are looking at a presentation which was made in ILS Mayapur this year, last month, by His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj. So I somehow got some of the notes, also the slides. So that is what we plan to look at today. Okay, so this is about Panchopasana and the perils of secularization. So this is basically centered around some essays written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his book called as Sri Krishna Samhita. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote this book somewhere in the late 1880s to appeal to the Bhadralok category of Bengal, the intelligentsia of Bengal. He wanted to introduce them to Bhagavatam. He, in fact, Bhaktivinoda Thakur uses Krishna Samhita as his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. That's how he presents it. But he has given a very vast introduction to the book, to this Krishna Samhita book. He has given a vast introduction. And in that introduction, he talks about this Panchopasana, the worship of Durga, Surya, Ganesh, Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. So it's a very interesting presentation by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And the slides of which is obviously made by this Maharaj are very, very interesting. And there are many good things to learn in it. So I just thought that we should go over it. Right, so let's go ahead. So as I had said, this is something which would be good on the computer screen because there's a lot of slides and content. And I'm just using Maharaj's slides as he presented it to ILS. Okay, so he presents it in two parts. So there are two sets of slides of almost 70 slides each. Let's see how far we get. He presents it as a problem and a solution. So let's go over it slowly. Right. So one thing is that the Vedic path which is there have so many directions which are mentioned in it, right? Like you see the broad Vedic path which is presented in our scriptures. There is karma, there is jnana, there is love of God, Vaidhi Bhakti, and so many. So there are so many directions one could take. And even within our movement like ISKCON or any movement if you take, there will be many devotees who will emphasize in one direction. So that's what this Maharaj shows here. Someone talks karma, jnana, charity, psychology, vastu, love of God, so on and so forth. So that's very interesting again. Right. So I'm just, I'll be going over some of the slides in more detail than the others. So he starts by quoting Srila Prabhupada, who says the confusion with the Vaishnava Samaj is not new because Prabhupada says spiritual movement in the material world is a difficult proposition. In a sense, it is difficult also because there is a lot of diversity in the material world. Everybody is different. And when you have, when you have one particular style of doing things and so many different people from different backgrounds come in, then everybody brings their own baggage, consciousness, etc. Anyway, let's go into something more. Yeah, so these are from Krishna Samhita quotes, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings. I'm just going to read some of them. We'll spend time on discussing some of these concepts a little more than the others. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes that sectarianism is a natural byproduct of the absolute truth. When acharyas first ascertain and instruct the truth, it is not polluted with sectarianism. Sectarianism means, you understand, right? To think that one's own path is the correct path, right? Or to think that what I am doing, this is the only right thing, correct? So this is a basic simple definition of sectarianism. So he says that an acharya who is there, he can speak Vedic knowledge without sectarianism. But then Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, but the rules and regulations received through disciplic succession regarding the goal and method of achieving it have changed in the due course of time according to the mentality and locality of people. So basically, one thing you will understand over the course of today's discussion is that mentality of an individual affects his line of thought and his kind of aspiration. So as a community gradually develops more respect for its own standards, it develops hatred towards other communities and considers their standards inferior. Okay, so this is sectarianism, where someone thinks that only what I am doing is the correct thing and what others are doing are incorrect and so on. So there is schisms and there are hard feelings for each other. So this is how Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about schisms and sectarianism in the beginning. Okay, anyway, let's go ahead. So in his book, he gives a very interesting framework how to understand other religions by using the concept of Panchopasana. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about this Panchopasana. Moreover, he surprisingly says that Panchopasana, which we usually think to be a misconception of Mayavadis, has a lot to do with us Vaishnavas. Now, this is where I wish to introduce the point, the central point made by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He says that this Panchopasana, which is there, worship of Durga Devi, Surya, Ganesha, Lord Shiva, Vishnu, etc. These, he says, have are more to do with the consciousness of the worshipper rather than the external worship. Okay, so this is the essence of what he's saying. So as we go ahead, you will be able to understand this better. So the way Bhaktivinoda Thakur puts it is that someone may be chanting Hare Krishna only, but if his aspiration is like that of a Durga worshipper, then he's actually worshipping Durga Devi only. Okay, so that means he's worshipping Krishna externally, but his worship of Krishna is similar to that of worshipping Durga. He's at that level. So basically, Bhaktivinoda Thakur uses the worship of these 5 devas as levels of consciousness, not as literal worship, which is very interesting, and you will see why it is like that. What are these levels of consciousness? He mentions them. So the thing is, so someone may be thinking that I'm not worshipping Surya Dev at all. Okay, externally he may not be a Surya Pasaka, but if his level of consciousness is at that, his aspiration is at that level, then that is what he's worshipping. Okay, so this is how he defines. So which is a very, very interesting definition, which we are going to explore in greater detail as we go ahead. Okay, so that's why he's saying here that Panchopasana, which we think is only for Mayavadis, has to do a lot with us Vaishnavas. So he says that this is to do with all of us only. Okay, so let's see how he puts that up. Yeah. So he uses this concept of 6 types of Vaishnavas: Bharavahi and Saragrahi. So Bharavahi means literally someone who is taking a load on himself. A load as in carrying a burden. Bhara is also burden. So someone who is carrying a burden on his head is called as Bharavahi. Okay, so he can be a Shakta, a Saura, a Ganapatya, Shaivite, or a Vaishnava. And is a follower of Durga, sun god, Ganesha, Shiva, or Vishnu. But then Saragrahi Vaishnavas, those who take the essence and who are truly beyond all these levels of consciousness, they are actually non-sectarian and rare. So that is how he presents it. Okay, so yeah, so this is the introduction. So as we go ahead, you will get this concept better. Yeah, so what is Panchopasana? So let's go into this definition, the way he does it. Okay, so initially we are reading something from Prabhupada. Prabhupada writes in the 6th canto, 4th chapter, 34th verse. For example, Mayavadis worship 5 devatas, Panchopasana. They do not actually believe in the form of the Lord, but for the sake of worship, they imagine some form to be God. Generally, they imagine a form of Vishnu, a form of Shiva, and form of Ganesh, Sun God, and Durga. This is called Panchopasana. So this is how Prabhupada defines Panchopasana. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also defines it in his book. He writes, the Smartas worship of Vishnu is a part of their worship of devatas such as Ganesha, Surya, and so on, and does not qualify as the worship of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Worshipping Vishnu as if he were one of the 5 devatas means to view him as a devata, failing to recognize the superlative position. Such worship is both offensive and atheistic. So they are talking about, both Prabhupada and Saraswati Thakur are talking about worshipping devatas without understanding the big picture. So that is how they're presenting. Anyway, so what have we got to do? Let's go into it. So this is the heart of the presentation. Yeah, so here again, you are going to get this point about mental attitude. Prabhupada also talks in his 2nd canto purport. By such a gross misconception of God through the material manifestations of his energy, one is enabled to spiritualize the mind and senses and gradually concentrate the mind on Lord Vishnu, the Supreme, who is present as a super soul in every heart and everywhere in every atom of the material universe. The system of Panchopasana recommending 5 mental attitudes for the common man is also enacted for this purpose. So please note Prabhupada's words here. Prabhupada is saying 5 mental attitude. That is what is the presentation here. We are talking about these, worshipping these 5 devatas as 5 mental attitudes. You will see what we are talking. Namely, gradual development, worshipping of the superior, that may be in the form of fire, electricity, sun, the mass of living beings, Lord Shiva, and at last the impersonal super soul, the partial representation of Lord Vishnu. So this is a purport from Prabhupada. Yeah, so Panchopasana is actually a description of natural development of human consciousness. This is very, very interesting. Yeah, so some more statements from Krishna Samhita before we go on into the topic head on. He says, Bhaktivinoda Thakur here is writing, human beings have 2 types of tendencies, arthik or material and paramarthik or spiritual. The constitutional activities of a pure soul are called one's swadharma or prescribed activities. The pure state of existence, this swadharma is present in the form of spiritual activities. Here he is using the word swadharma, please note, as spiritual activity. That means swadharma of the soul. He is using it in that context. All the above mentioned material tendencies become successful when doubted with spiritual activities. Otherwise, they cannot independently help one attain the highest goal. From engagement in material activities up to awakening of spiritual activities is called the preliminary stage of God consciousness. From this preliminary stage up to the Uttamadhikari stage, there are innumerable levels. So he's also talking about different levels, which are going to be clear now very soon. Yeah, so these levels are basically called as Shakta, Saura, Ganapatya, Shaiva, and Vaishnava. Okay, so here it is. So this is the essence of the, this is a central theme that we are going to talk today. The natural tendencies of people are in this ladder. That means enjoyment, which is kama, morality, dharma, prosperity, artha, moksha, liberation, mukti, personal liberation, and swadharma, pure love of God. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur uses these terms, so we are using the same terms. So swadharma is using it in the context of pure love of God. So this is how the tendencies of people exist in general, from kama till pure love of God. So these are the steps. Okay. Then he basically says that each of these dharmas come at different points. So look at this. Shakta dharma is at the level of kama, enjoyment. Saura dharma is at morality. Ganapatya is at the level of prosperity. Shaiva dharma is for moksha or the impersonal liberation. Vaishnava dharma is for the personal liberation. This is the entering the Vaikuntha. And then there is pure love of God, which is again to enter Vrindavan, etc. So this is how Bhaktivinoda Thakur has presented the sequence, the connection of Panchopasana and worship of Krishna. Okay, so this is how it is. So you see here, right? So at the level of Kama, there is Shakta worship, which is also very interesting because Shakta worship is connected to Annamaya Kosha, right? If you remember, we have discussed this before when we spoke about Panchakosha. Shakta is at Annamaya Kosha. And at Annamaya Kosha, that is the first level of existence, which is primarily connected to the senses for sensual pleasures. And for such people, So that is the starting point. Shaura Dharma or worship of the Surya is connected to the Pranamaya Kosha. That is also connected to Dharma, morality, etc. Ganapatya is connected to prosperity. We will see that in detail. Like most of you may know that Ganapati's two wives are called as Riddhi and Siddhi. They're basically related to prosperity and growth. Okay, so that is how the Ganapati Dharma is depicted. Shaiva Dharma is connected to moksha or the impersonal liberation. We all know that those who are keen on that, the impersonal liberation, they primarily worship Lord Shiva. Vaishnava Dharma, worship of Vishnu, is for personal liberation in the spiritual world. And then pure love of God is to enter Vrindavan. So this is how Bhaktivinoda Thakur presents it. So what I also understand from this presentation is, that when we preach to people, we may, kind of philosophically, you may convince somebody and that person may start chanting 16 rounds and doing everything. But if his aspiration is at one of these levels, so that means if his aspiration is, let's say if his aspiration is material enjoyment, that's the core of his self, right? Then even if externally, philosophically, he has been convinced that the best thing for him to do is to chant Hare Krishna, and he may be doing that also, because that is his internal aspiration, that is where he is. Okay, so that is the point which is being made here. Okay, I hope all of you are able to understand this. So a person may be chanting Krishna's names, but depending on his aspiration, if his aspiration, for example, is prosperity, primarily inner aspiration, so this is something very deep, right? One is philosophically we preach to people, and like if you ask any of our devotees also, you just catch anyone and at the temple and ask, Prabhuji, what is your goal? Everybody will tell, yeah, certainly we want to go to the spiritual world, so that's an immediate external answer. But then there is a deep inner person also, an aspiration of a person. And such a person may, and that deep inner self, that aspiration, it may be towards one of these, which means that is where he really is. You understood? So externally, we may have given him a particular type of sadhana, and we may have made him make certain statements about what he aspires for. But internally, depending on his consciousness, depending on his true aspiration, he will be placed at one of these levels. So that is how Bhaktivinoda Thakur puts it, which I thought is very interesting, which also made me feel that that is why in society, in families, if you see like the Mahabharata or in general scriptures, you will see that all these devatas are a part of everybody's life, correct? Because in every family, there are all different type of people, correct? Because imagine like there is a family of so many members, then somebody may, because these are all very individual, right? Because this is very, very individual. So somebody's inner aspiration may be at one particular level, then that type of worship is kind of more in sync with his reality. He needs to come up, but that is up to him or her when they come up in their internal aspiration. But this presentation also made me appreciate a lot our general Vedic culture, which presented so many levels for people depending on who they are and where they really fit in. So that is a point I think all of us can truly appreciate here. Okay, let's go ahead. Now there's another important ladder that Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks of, which needs to be stated before we go ahead. Yeah. So he says that generally there are 5 types of paramarthik dharmas or spiritual duties that have been known by different names in different countries at different times. If one considers all the different dharmas that are current in India and abroad, one can see that they fall under these 5 categories. So there is another set of 5 which Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about, and then he combines these 2. So let's see what they are. Look at this. So this is how he presents it. So he says that the lowest level is the immoral atheist. Okay, Niti Shunya, he calls it. That means he's atheist, doesn't believe in a God, and he's also immoral in his activities. Then there is the moral atheist, the Nirishwara Naitika. It doesn't accept the supreme, but he is at least he likes morality. So at the lowest level, he doesn't accept the supreme, and neither is he moral. Now at least he has accepted morality. At the third level, Seshwara Naitika, he talks about the religious moralist. That means he's not only moral, but he has also accepted the Supreme Lord. And then at the fourth level, he talks about the impersonalist. And then he talks about the Vaidhi Sadhaka, that is the fifth level. And then finally, the Raganuga Bhakta or spontaneous devotion. So this way he presents that there are different levels of God consciousness also, atheism, agnosticism, religiosity, devotion, spontaneous devotion. Let's go ahead. Atheism, this is by Saraswati Thakur. He says atheism represents the temporary rejecting function of alternatives by the mind. The mind refuses to accept as true or desirable any stationary condition for the reason that it is afraid that it would be suicidal. Atheism wants to live on the state of ever-changing activity. It is a proper negation of absolute conceived as inaction. Its exclusive attachment to self-gratification is the cause of its disinclination to seek the truth and its consequent failure to hide him. Okay, so this is looking a little difficult English, but Saraswati Thakur would typically write like this. The most important thing here to understand is that in atheism, there is attachment to sense gratification, which is calling as self-gratification. And there is a disinclination to seek for the absolute truth. So that's the important part here. Okay, now how are we going to go ahead here? So please try to get this point. Material tendency for sense enjoyment creates immoral atheists whose consciousness is on the level of Annamaya Kosha. When this material tendency is dovetailed with Paramarthika tendencies, it creates Shakta Dharma, worship of material energy in its varieties of manifestations for the fulfillment of one's desires for sense enjoyment. Okay, so now there is the connection between the two ladders that Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained. So what he's saying here is the lowest level, if you remember, we said is atheism, right? Immoral atheism. So when the immoral atheist, who is primarily, he says, on the level of Annamaya Kosha only. Why Annamaya Kosha? Because the immoral atheist only understands one thing, how to give pleasure to the senses. So he says when such a person gets connected to Paramarthika tendencies, Paramarthika means the Supreme Lord, he gets connected initially. So please try to understand, just try to picturize this. There is a person, X person. Okay, this person is completely on Annamaya Kosha. He only understands gratification of the body. Okay, that is his level of Chetana. And because he's at that level, he tends to be immoral, because when the whole goal is only gratification of body, then you want to gratify the body by any means. Okay. And in general, he's not accepting any, he's also called as an atheist because he has not evolved in his understanding of the self. So please remember, in our scriptures, even if somebody doesn't accept the Atma, he's called as an atheist. Remember, that means to be in bodily consciousness also is considered atheism only. The understanding here is theism begins when you understand the Atma. Okay, too much to be just thinking that I am this body is also considered atheism. So in our scriptures, atheism again is slightly different than the Abrahamic one. So you may be wondering that, how come we are calling this level atheist here? Because he is at too much at the level of bodily consciousness, wants to enjoy. But then Bhaktivinoda Thakur says when he is connected to Paramartha, when such a person gets introduced to an idea of a supreme, then his understanding is typically Shakta only, right? Because he's at that level. So Shakta, Durga Devi, she is the predominating deity of this Annamaya Kosha. So if such a person gets connected to any spirituality, it will be at the level of Shakta only. Because he will want to worship some god or some superior primarily as a material energy in its varieties of manifestations for fulfilling one's desires of sense enjoyment. So that is where he is, right? So that's what. So yeah, now look at this one. So now we are talking about Shakta. So that's it, Shakta Dharma. So this is the first thing. So what is Shakta Dharma? This also very beautifully has described the various forms of Durga Devi. This also is Sambandha. So there is Abhideya and Prayojana. Abhideya is also about, so you see now in this also there is Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. So please try to understand this, that even in Durga Devi worship, it is not that all worship of Durga Devi is Tamasic only. No, not necessary. Some of it are. So the Tantric worship, the animal sacrifices, the Panchamakara, offering of Mamsa, Madhya, Matsya, Mahila, Maithuna, that is meat, wine, fish, woman, sex, etc. These things are tamasic. Okay, but then everybody is not like this also. There are those who are worshipping Durga in a sattvic sense also. Okay, so like during Navratri, people worship the various forms of Durga, which is considered sattvic. Okay, so the prayojana is kama. Okay, that is some kind of sense pleasure or facility for the senses. Okay, so this is Shakta Dharma primarily. That is how it is. And yeah, so it's a beautiful thing. So these are the different 9 forms of Durga Devi. And these are the names of Durga Devi also. So I was quite happy to see that there are all these names and each of these names have specific meanings. So this is how the Shakta is situated, right? He is worshipping Devi primarily for the bodily pleasures, etc. I mean, if the person is at that level of consciousness, he needs this. Okay, he needs this. So that is how he presents. Okay, and as we said earlier, even if he externally not worshipping Durga Devi, is worshipping Krishna only, but if his aspirations are very sensual, then he is worshipping Krishna also in this form of Durga only. So that is how he talks about it. Right? Bhaktivinoda Thakur has also our Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj. Both of them, make the same point here that depending on who you are worshipping Krishna in that particular form. Right. Yeah, so there are 2 modes of Durga worship. 2 aspects of Shakti can be discerned. One, the fierce form of the deity, which is dreaded, and the second is the benign aspect of her love and kindness. The first one is more primitive, tamasic or rajasic personification of Shakti. Fear is the predominant emotion of sadhaka in worshipping this aspect. Fear of natural calamities, ill health, enemies, poverty, death, and ignorance. The second form is the sattvic form, a more sublime concept which is a product of Upanishadic thoughts. Here the sadhaka, through great knowledge, largely sheds the fear of the deity and loves her as his mother. She is imagined as seated on a lotus and residing in beautiful surroundings with a book, japamala, parrot, sugarcane, veena in hand. She is worshipped with the object of realizing higher and higher reaches of consciousness and knowledge with offerings of flowers, milk, and honey. Right, so Durga Devi is also, so it's not that all the devatas are worshipped always in tamasic only, no. So as he's saying here, these devatas are also worshipped in the sattvika form. Okay, so just like as I said, Navratri festival, during that time she is worshipped primarily sattvika, at least the Saraswati Puja and several of such aspects. So in society, that is why you will see if you see the Mahabharata or if you see the life of the Pandavas, etc., you will see them connected to all these deities also, because they had this aspect to their life as well, being in society. So you will see that very often. So you will see, for example, in India that everybody has a Kula Devi, right? So Kula Devi basically is always Durga Devi only. Every village has one. Even Radharani has one Devi only in her village. Correct. So the sattvic form is also very commonly seen because Kama, or that aspect of life, needs this particular address. So what I also understood is, being a Vaishnava, it is a level of consciousness. It's like you have to be personally evolved to that level where you genuinely don't need any of these. Then only you transcend all these and you're called as a Vaishnava. Okay, so it's not just about an external symbolism. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes a lot of emphasis on this. Being a devotee is not just about the externals. Yeah, we have taken the externals. We wear tilak and timala, we chant Hare Krishna and so on. But truly, when one is beyond certain levels, only then he is called a Vaishnava. Right. So let's go ahead. Yeah, so all behavior and practice instructed in Shakta Dharma are helpful in the preliminary stage. Such behavior and practice is meant to bring one closer to spiritual life, and materialistic people may be attracted to this until they begin to inquire about the supreme absolute truth. Shakta Dharma is the living entity's initial spiritual endeavor and is extremely essential for people of that level. Okay, so it's very useful for so many people. Okay, so that's why you can never say that in a society such a worship should not be there at all. No, you cannot say that, because Shakta Dharma, as he is saying here, many people will actually need it because they are at actually that level, right? So that this is why Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about sectarianism, schisms. That means you have to appreciate that no, there are people who are at that level. They will worship God like that. Let us encourage them in the sattvic aspect of it, and slowly let them progress in their life, right? So you cannot, one cannot think that this thing is not needed or something. Yeah. Material tendency to establish rules and regulations to facilitate sense enjoyment and peace creates moral atheist whose consciousness is on pranamaya kosha. So now Bhaktivinoda Thakur says at the next level there is pranamaya kosha more than annamaya. So in pranamaya, a person is concerned with energy, and he is connected to that. So he is still considered an atheist. Again, please remember the word atheist is used because he has not yet come to the understanding of Atma, etc. So that actually starts only with the Manomaya. That means when you transcend the body, at least. When the material tendency is doubted with Paramarthika tendencies, it creates Saura Dharma. So he says that such people who are on Pranamaya Kosha, whose primary appreciation is energy aspect of the absolute, and when they get connected to Paramartha in some way, they become Saura Dharma followers, worshipping the sun god for healthy, long, peaceful life and fulfillment of one's desires and regulated sense enjoyment as a result. Okay, so that is the second. So this is now Saura Dharma, right? One then considers the energy of work and the superiority of heat over dull matter, and he accepts the sun god, who is the source of heat, as a worshipable deity. At that time, Saura Dharma is awakened, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, right? So, okay, so this is considered one level higher. Okay, so in Saura Dharma, what happens? There is the sun god, the 12 Adityas, one among the 12 Adityas, the Surya Dev. What is the Abhideya? There are various karmas. There is like the offering of water to the sun during the 3 Sandhyas. Even chanting of the Brahma Gayatri comes under that. Surya Namaskar, Aditya Hridaya Stotra. So many such things are there, which is worshipping the sun god. And what is the purpose? Healthy, long life, yogic powers, happy social interactions, etc. So this is the goal of Saura Dharma. Okay, so what it also means is that if this is our aspiration, if somebody's inner core of life is aspiring for these things, he is actually a Saura Dharma follower. He is more fitting in that, which is fine, but we just need to understand that. So we know this, the various Surya Namaskar, by the way, we know Surya Namaskar mainly as a set of asana, but some of us may not know that actually there are mantras also to be chanted with Surya Namaskar. And it is actually offering obeisances to the sun, Surya Dev. Correct. So here only some smaller mantras are given. But in my childhood, I had the opportunity to see my father's one teacher was there in the place where we grew up in Bombay. So he would teach Surya Namaskar mantras in detail. So they would do like 1.5 hours of Suryopasana every Sunday, where all these Brahmins would come together and they would chant all these mantras from the Veda, which are for Surya Dev, and they would offer obeisances to the sun god. So I had seen that in my childhood. So it was, I didn't have a camera to record it. I don't think they're doing it now, but it was quite interesting. So anyway, so this is how Surya Dev is worshipped. The Surya is glorified in the Vedas as all-seeing God who observes both good and evil actions. He expels not only darkness, but also evil dreams and diseases. Sun also occupies a central position in Vedas, being the father of Yamaraj, Punisher and Redeemer. See, that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur has associated Saura Dharma to morality. because please remember, Surya Dev is the father of Yama, and he is, Surya stands for Dharma. So that is why Suryopasaka is considered moral. Okay, so previously there was some immorality. Like even in Durga worship, at least in the Tamasic Durga worship, you will see that they offer liquor and so many other things. But in Suryopasana, you cannot do all that. In Suryopasana, it is more morality and dharma has come into the picture. Okay. Yeah, so this is the second level, Saura Dharma. Okay. Now the third level, material tendency to achieve artha, prosperity and well-being, to facilitate gross and subtle sense enjoyment and peace, creates moral theist. So now please remember, now you have come up. Now it's called as a theist because you are going beyond the gross body. You start understanding the mind and consequently the subtle body and the self. Okay. Whose consciousness is on the level of Manomaya Kosha, when the arthic tendency to achieve prosperity. Okay, so everybody wants prosperity, but suppose somebody who wants prosperity gets connected to Paramarthika tendency to worship higher power. Okay, so such a person starts taking Ganesh worshipper. This is the level of theistic Varnashrama. So from here, literally theism starts because the mind and the self has come into being like that. Okay, so that's how he presents it. So Ganapatya, prosperity. So this is Artha. Later, when one considers even heat and dull matter and animal consciousness superior, then this third stage, Ganapatya Dharma, is attained. Yeah, now this is very interesting. The next statement, which is made by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So I'm just reading that. They realize that consciousness is distinct from matter, but they confuse consciousness with the mind. Those who understand that spirit is superior than matter have risen to the next level. But when the human being develops an appreciation for consciousness, initially his conception of consciousness is contaminated. Therefore, it is depicted as Ganesha, half human, half animal. So basically, he's saying that at this point, you have arisen from matter, but you have confused consciousness with the mind. That means the understanding of that Atma has not come so much. That is why, because the conception is contaminated, the Lord here is depicted as half human, half animal, Ganesha, right? Like elephant head and so on. Yeah, so the Sambandha here, Ganesha has 32 forms. Two Shaktis of Ganesha, Siddhi and Vriddhi, which is prosperity and I think success or something. Abhideya is worship of Ganesha in temples at home, and Prayojana is prosperity, well-being. So we all know how Ganesh worship happens, right? It's primarily directed towards prosperity and well-being and so on. So that is where this is directed. Yeah, Ganesha. So this is Ganesha. It's a beautiful picture, I thought, of Lord Ganesha, with all his bodily parts mentioned with the purpose behind it. It's good to, children sometimes ask why he has a long trunk, this, that, why he has even a mouse. Look at that down there. He has a mouse because mouse is desire. Unless under control, it can cause havoc. You ride the desire and keep it under control and don't allow it to take you for a ride. Okay, so that is the depiction of the mouse, which is the Vahana for Ganesha. It is desire, which should not control us. So desire by nature is a little fickle. Na? So like a mouse keeps running around here and there. The desire is said to be running here and there. And you ride the desire and keep it under control and don't allow it to take you for a ride. So if you see this whole thing, the picture, his body, Lord Ganesha's body, his various parts of his body, what they indicate, then you will be able to appreciate so many points in connection to this, right? He has a small mouth, talk less, large ears, listen more, big head, think big, small eyes to concentrate. Blessings to protect the spiritual path. The trunk is high efficiency, adaptability. One tusk, retain the good and throw away the bad. Modaka, rewards of sadhana. Large stomach, peacefully digest all good and bad in life. Prasad, the whole world is at your feet and for your asking. So it's a beautiful depiction of Lord Ganesha. Yeah, so he has 32 forms. I think the names are also here. Yeah, it's all the names of the 32 types of Ganesha are mentioned here. Right, so this is how Ganapati Dharma exists. Now, the material tendency to achieve moksha, liberation from suffering, create Salvinists whose consciousness is on the level of Vijnanamaya Kosha. So this is the fourth level. When this tendency is doubted with Paramarthic tendency to worship the higher power, it takes the shape of Shiva Puja. This is the level of Jnana Yoga, meditation and Vairagya. Okay, so now when you come to Vijnanamaya Kosha from Annamaya, from Manomaya, then you are interested in salvation. And when that interest is connected to Paramarthika, then it is Shiva Puja, which is Jnana Yoga, meditation, Vairagya. Okay, so this is Shaiva Dharma, which is Moksha, which is the impersonal liberation. In the fourth gross stage, Lord Shiva is worshipped as pure consciousness of the living entities and Shaiva Dharma manifests. Okay, so this is like Aham Brahmasmi level. So that is how this is mentioned. So Sambandhe Shiva, the 11 forms of Rudra and 8 types of forms. Abhideya, the worship of Shiva in an abstract form of Linga, right? So worship of Archa Vigraha, imaginary Dhyana, Vairagya, Neti Neti, chanting of Shivoham, Soham, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, etc. And Prayojana is the impersonal liberation. Okay, what we devotees call as spiritual suicide, because it is merging of the Atma in the Brahman. So this is the goal of this type of worship. And Rudra has 11 expansions and 8 forms. Generally, these have 5 heads, 3 eyes, and 10 arms each. According to Mahabharata, 11 forms, the names are written, and the 8 forms of Shiva are earth, water, fire, air, ether, sun, moon, and performer of sacrifice. So on and so forth. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so this is how you have come till Shaiva Dharma. Then the human tendency to achieve mukti, liberation from material sufferings through service and surrender, creates followers of monotheistic religions, accepting one God and all powerful, all knowing, all pervading. Their consciousness on the level of Vijnanamaya Kosha. In the Vedic tradition, it takes the shape of Vishnu as the giver of liberation. This is the level of Bhakti Yoga, pure Vaidhi sadhana. Okay, so now you want a relationship with God. So that is why it is Vijnanamaya Kosha. Because in, sorry, this is Anandamaya Kosha, I believe. No, it's saying Vijnana, I think. Vijnana was previously. Anyway, so maybe it's kind of a gradual progress. Yeah, so there is Vaishnava Dharma here, which is the 4 types of liberation. Yeah, so the Sambandha here is 10 avatars of Vishnu, Lakshmi Narayan, Sitaram, so on. Abhideya is the Vaidhi sadhana, worship of Archa Vigraha, and Prayojana is 4 types of personal liberation. This is geared towards the 4 types of mukti. Okay. Yeah, so the various avatars are worshipped, and Lakshmi Narayan, right? So this is worship of Lakshmi Narayan. And then finally, there is this Jaiva Dharma, or this is Sambandha. This is Radha Krishna worship, Raganuga sadhana, spontaneous devotion, development of Raga. Prayojana is Bhava Bhakti, Prema Bhakti, Sneha, Mana, Pranaya Raga, Anuraga, Bhava, Mahabhava. What we read in the Nectar of Devotion. So these are all the stages which are achieved by this type of worship. So Chaitanya Charitamrita and other scriptures talk about it. Shukadeva Goswami talks about it, and so on. So this is how it is, right? So, okay, so if you see, it's all about a gradual elevation of consciousness from atheism to agnosticism to religiosity, salvation, devotion, and spontaneous devotion. Right? So this is how this topic has been explained. Okay, so there is actually one more, 1 second. There's one more slideshow. I'll just take that, because I don't think I'm going to take this topic again. So I'll be sharing this slides as well later. Just allow me to. Yeah, the second part we will go over quite quickly. I'll not be reading all of it, but yeah, Panchopasana and the perils of secularization, the possible solution. So basically, yeah, so we saw this, these 5 forms: Durga Devi, Surya, Ganapatya, Lord Shiva, Vishnu. Yeah. So I'm just going over only some parts. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, so this is what we have already seen till now. How one progresses from this. You can look at it either way, from Annamaya Kosha to Anandamaya Kosha, spontaneous devotion, or otherwise. Yeah. So the thing is, can a person come to the highest level? He can. Yeah, he can. Certainly, he can. Everybody can come to spontaneous devotion, but it is about the inner aspiration of a person. Okay. So what I understood, I'll just summarize some points here, is that sometimes we preach to someone and we externally kind of convert them very quickly, and philosophically we tell them that this is what you should do and you should come to this stage because this is the highest, right? But then sometimes because the person's inner aspiration has not really changed, he is really not there. Okay, so externally he may accept spontaneous devotion, but then his inner self is still stuck in one of these levels. So he needs time. Actually, he needs time to come up. Okay, so see, the whole point is our Vedic system, which is there. It is very patient with everybody. So they are in no hurry. Krishna also is not in any hurry. Okay, so if somebody needs time, then he will have to come up like that. So this is one important thing I understood. Second thing I understood is Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, which is something very interesting and which we should take care, is that any type of offense causes one to come down in the ladder also. That means just like you can go up in the ladder, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says you can come down also. So he gives the example of Akrura to say how in Krishna Leela we read this, that Akrura was a pure devotee, but because he ended up upsetting the gopis, because he took Krishna away, it is said that is one reason that he fell to Surya worship. If you know the story in Krishna book, you know that Akrura brings Krishna from Vrindavan to Mathura, and later he becomes, for some time, he pairs up with these Kritavarma and others and starts worshipping the Samantaka jewel, okay, which is actually sun god worship, right? Because the Samantaka jewel was from the sun god. So he uses this as an example to say that just like one can go up in the ladder, one can come down also. Okay, one can come down also for various reasons. One's aspirations may change in life as well. So I thought that these are points worth considering for everybody, devotees especially. Also, I thought that in a larger society, whether it is family or samaj, when we say, then you cannot institute spontaneous devotion as a method for everybody. Okay, because people are going to be at different levels and they will need their own space and they will need that type of environment to come up, right? So that's why you will see that these devatas are typically worshipped in like if you see the Bhagavatam also, or if you see Krishna book, or you see Mahabharata, you will see that these devatas, whether it is Durga Devi or all these personalities beginning from Durga Devi, are there in everyone's lives. Because in a society, you need all these positions, right? Because people are very diverse. Okay, so these are some thoughts I had. Now we'll quickly go over these slides. I'm not going to read everything over here. Okay, so I'm going to read only some points here in the second set of slides. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, so he also says, this is a very interesting point this Maharaj makes, Bhakti Gyan Maharaj. He says that even within ISKCON, he says that actually people are worshipping all these also. Okay, so he says, for example, there are Durga Puja, or some in some temples they may be doing this, which he may not agree with, but he says that it is there. That just like now, this is another interesting thing if you see. In the entire West today, in ISKCON Western world, we attract people a lot through yoga. You may be knowing it, right? Even Bhakti Center in New York and so many centers, you're attracting people through yoga. So essentially what you're doing is, we just need to understand the concept. You are attracting people at the level of Saura Dharma, right? Surya Upasaka. Because see, at that level, people are interested. There are the big, large population of people who are attracted to that. Okay, so now you are trying to connect them to Paramarthika, but that is their level essentially. So that's why we see that, so this is a picture, I think, from some Western temple where you see that all these people are doing some yoga asanas and all that, which is very common in the West. Perhaps in India, we are not doing that today because we seem to get people for direct worship as well. But it does seem that this would be accommodated or whatever. So this is a reality, which is whether we like it or not. So we just need to understand that this is because people are at different levels. Yeah, Ganapati again, right? Riddhi and Siddhi. So people are actually interested in prosperity, success. That's their level of aspiration. Okay, so most of the time, people are thinking how to multiply their money, how to become rich, wealthy, and so on. So, which basically means that their consciousness is at this level of Ganapati, whether they like it or not. Yeah, then Vairagya. There are so many people who are always talking about Vairagya, renunciation, etc., which is essentially at that level, right? So we all worship Krishna, but in which mood is the question? Okay, so here these are some beautiful paintings if you see here. So this is like Durga Devi, only Krishna is seen here also. So what he's basically trying to say is somebody at that level, he may be worshipping Krishna, but he's actually worshipping Krishna as Durga only. Or this is another picture you must have seen of Ganesha, right? Shiva also, Lord Shiva also. So basically the idea is that depending on your level of consciousness, you're worshipping a particular deity. Yeah. So another thing, another way he puts it is, this Maharaj, the way he puts it is that Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu talks about karma, jnana, and bhakti, right? So these the levels of Shakta, Saura, Ganapatya are primarily karma, correct? Because one is interested in enjoyment, or one is interested in energy, one is interested in prosperity, etc. So this is primarily the karma, and then there is jnana, which is moksha, etc. And then, so bhakti is beyond all that, right? So Vaishnava dharma comes on top of karma and jnana. So that's another way you can look at this whole thing. Okay. Yeah, so I'm not even going to read all these, but there is karma mishra bhakti, jnana mishra bhakti. So depending on what type of inner consciousness one has, one is situated in that particular place. I hope you're able to appreciate this point, right? And true bhakti is beyond all these, right? Because where you're not personally interested in. So it's a gradual elevation of consciousness. Yeah, so if somebody wants to reach spontaneous devotion or raga bhakti, which is considered the goal of Anandamaya Kosham, at least Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give this raga marga. Then there is this karma and jnana, which are kind of obstacles to that, right? And depending on where one is, one will take time to come up. And he also gives some interesting things. Now, this is another interesting point which is made here, that the Puranas say that if somebody worships these devatas, slowly they come up also. So it's not that they don't. So for example, look at this from one Adi Varaha Purana. There is a statement which says, if one worships Ganesha for thousands of births and becomes free from sins, it is possible to come to the platform of Vaishnavism. Okay, so in society, you need these things, right? Because people are slowly going to come up. It's not that everybody is going to come up immediately. So that's how the Puranas talk about it. Yeah, now another important point here, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes is that this is the point, that nobody should think that, nobody should criticize any other level. Okay, one should, because this is the general tendency. If somebody is at one level, they think that their level only is correct level and all the other levels are wrong or incorrect. So he says that one should not do that. And rather he says that if someone wishes to progress beyond one level and come up, it's an internal progress. That means truly your aspiration of life should have changed. Then only it will make any sense. Otherwise it doesn't, right? So otherwise you become like what he calls as niyamagraha. You're stuck to a previous level thinking that this is all I need and I don't need to come up and so on. Right? Yeah, so and you can come down also. So this is something that I already just said. You can come down primarily because of offense. So this is a verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where Rupa Goswami says that by an offense against the dearest devotee, if the offense is grave, the bhava will be destroyed. If the offense is medium, the bhava turns into bhava bas. If the offense is slight, the bhava becomes inferior. Okay, so Jiva Goswami in commentary also says that one's consciousness gets affected by offense and when comes down. And they give the example of Akrura, incidentally, who started worshipping the sun god. So this is example given by Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, etc. in this context to say that how you can come down in your upasana also. Right? Yeah. So this is it. And I think, so I'm not even going to Yeah, so let's just summarize this discussion. So this gradual elevation of consciousness, so this is a solution offered. We want to come to the platform of Shuddha Vaishnava Dharma, complete dedication to Supreme Consciousness or Vishnu Tattva, Krishna. Those who are really Paramahamsas are never concerned with external appearances, practices, and conceptions of the individual. Rather, they see in what direction one's dedication is going. In this way, the pure Vaishnavas have no sectarian mood. They do not belong to any cult. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, what he's saying here is, don't look at external things and practices. So this is what I said in the beginning also, right? Don't look at externals of a person to think who is a Vaishnava. You cannot never understand like that. Somebody externally may be looking like a Vaishnava, but the whole thing is about where one's dedication is. Dedication means where one's heart is situated. If one's heart in terms of aspirations, etc., is situated at one of those levels, that is the place he is. Okay, so he says that this is how pure Vaishnavas don't have any sectarian mood, and they don't, mark people just by certain external appearances and rituals. You can never do that. You will never understand who is a Vaishnava, who is not. Okay, so yeah, and certainly by associating with the devotees and chanting the holy name, one can slowly come up. So this is also mentioned in the book. The scriptural conclusion is that Shaktas are gradually elevated to Bhakti by first becoming worshippers of the sun god, then worshippers of Ganesh, worshippers of Shiva, then Vaishnava, and finally Sampradayika Vaishnava. So they are making a distinction between Panchopasaka Vaishnava and Sampradayika Vaishnava. Panchopasaka Vaishnava means worshipping Vishnu like a Devata. Sampradayika Vaishnava means coming in one of the Sampradayas and understanding Vishnu or Krishna more perfectly and developing love for him. So that distinction is also made. And in this way, by association of a pure devotee, the Chaya Bhakti, Abhas, transforms into pure devotion and slowly comes up. Right, yeah. So this is all that is there. So, of course, I just summarized. I thought that this was a very interesting topic. So I thought we should, take some time out today and discuss. Yeah, if there are any questions, I'll take it. So we'll just go one by one. Who's ever hand is up. I can see Damodar Ashtakam Prabhu. Yeah, please go ahead.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, very much.
Prabhuji, like generally we hear the sequence is once when one executes dharma, then one gets artha, and then he can fulfill his like desires. So how can one go for sense gratification directly? He needs like prosperity. When we say it is for executing our desires only. So how do we see?
I understood. See, it is cyclic also. So it is like, see, many of these concepts are cyclic. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, it is a cycle. One reinforces the other. It is for Kama that you need these things. Okay. But among all of them, Kama is considered the lowest in terms of aspiration. That means a person, he is primarily aspiring for enjoyment. So that is where he has been positioned. So that position is considered lowest in that hierarchy. He is going to get that by doing some dharma only. That is understandable. Now see, this dharma, artha and all that, see, the ladder that I just showed on the slide, this is one hierarchy where it shows like Durga Devi and Kama and so on. But in each of these, there is again some dharma, artha, everything, right? So in all that also, there are subdivisions of dharma, artha, kama, like that. But broadly, the Shakta worship is considered at the level of kama. That's the point, and that's considered lowest in terms of an aspiration. As an aspiration, it is the lowest.
In that Ganesh Ganapat stage, we say prosperity. What does that mean? Prosperity.
Prosperity. So if you see, even Ganesha's vibes are called Riddhi Siddhi. Riddhi Siddhi actually stand for success and prosperity. That's what they two stand for. And if you see Lord Ganesha's worship, it is actually done Vigna Harta. He is generally worshipped for removing all obstacles on the path of one's achievement of success, right? It's always like that. Even if you see in our society, the way Lord Ganesh is worshipped, it is primarily for artha. It is primarily for prosperity, correct? And Ganesh is also connected to the mind in the Manomaya Kosha, because Ganesha, Lord Ganesha is considered the leader of the Ganas. That means he's the leader of people. So he brings people together. So that is the understanding behind Ganesh. And somehow you see incidentally that happening also. I don't think it's just a coincidence, but you see that in Ganesh worship, people come together and do things like that. So that is why it is connected to Manomaya Kosha and prosperity in terms of wealth, relationships, and so on. So that is where he's positioned.
And one other question, like when someone comes to this, as you said, Sampradayic Vaishnav, but that doesn't mean he is on that level. That's what you are saying.
Yeah. That means, see,
But,
come means, see, externally somebody may have come, but internally he may be at one of those levels, right? Are you getting the point? Internally, his inner aspiration, there is one. It is like sometimes, by strong preaching or by some method, he may get somebody to do something externally. But internally, he may be somewhere else only. That is what he's talking about, right? Internally, if you are spiritual, then you are basically Shakta only. You're Shakta.
Okay.
Internally, if you are too conscious about body, fitness, and being moral and that aspect, then it is Saura. Internally, if you are mainly conscious about how to accumulate money, how to accumulate this, that, so then you are Ganapatya. So like that. Internally, if you are more oriented towards Vairagya, liberation, then you are Shaiva, like that.
So like initially when he comes, like he gives up the things, like for example, the girls in the family are supposed to worship some demigod for having a good husband or vice versa. So they suddenly give up all those things when they become Sampradayic Vaishnavas, although they are not on that level. And afterwards they create a mess, like kind of.
I agree with that point. See, that's why I also said that if you remember throughout my presentation, I was making this point. That is why in society and in families, you see connection to all these devas in ways. It is impossible that you can avoid them.
So
but that is the reality of people. What you're saying is correct. That is the reality of the people. But you have to understand that it is needed because of this. Okay. So for example, a young girl, so you see that in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela also, right? He sees that all these girls are worshipping Shiva or Durga for a good husband, correct? And he says that you only worship me, and then he's joking with them, but ultimately he's very happy with them also. So basically, in society, there are all types of people, and they have that aspiration, they have that need. So that is how it is supposed to be. So one thing I understood through all this, na Prabhuji, is that becoming a Vaishnava is a very personal thing. It is a becoming a devotee of Krishna truly is a very personal journey.
He only knows.
Yeah, it's a very personal journey. So I may become I'm talking about anybody in general, may become a Vaishnava because of their aspiration and their inner consciousness. They may actually come to that level. But that doesn't mean that the family that they're staying in or the society where they're staying in, everybody will be like that, right? Because it's a very personal thing. It cannot be it cannot be like the whole family aspirations changes, because aspiration is very individualistic. You get the point, na?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, let's see if anybody else. And yeah, Rajendra, unmute. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, Prabhu, there's a statement by Prabhupada. He said that devotees, many devotees will reach the Swargaloka, because of the chanting of Hare Krishna. So, I was just trying to connect that statement with this: that if they have those mental attitudes,
Yes,
and they may associate with these devatas in the Swargaloka, and then progress further. Is that?
yeah. See, if they have that aspiration, that is where they are. See, so the point is, so that proper statement, how I would understand is that if that is their inner aspiration, material enjoyment, then even though they were externally worshiping Krishna, they were at that level only, na? So that is what they will get. Okay. See, Krishna is in no hurry. This is one thing I realized, that Krishna is not in any hurry in the sense of time factor, right? He's patient. So he allows everybody's internal aspirations to change with their own time and understanding. Everybody has to grow, but people will take their own time to grow, right? It's not that you can't force your internal you can't force somebody else's internal aspiration to change. Yeah, you can take care of your own internal aspirations with over a period of time, but you cannot do that to somebody else, right? So it's like.
So another question I had is there was a slide on Lakshmi Narayan and then Radha Krishna. I didn't understand the difference of level in that. Can you explain?
Yeah, no. So Lakshmi Narayan is at Vaidhi Bhakti, and Radha Krishna has been shown as this Raganuga. Okay. So there are two things, na, Vaidhi sadhana and Raganuga sadhana. So in Vaidhi, that means in rules and regulations, we are worshipping Lakshmi Narayan. Like Prabhupada also said, na, that our temple worship is at Lakshmi Narayan level only because it is Vaidhi. And Raganuga, it is spontaneous. So that's considered even higher. Raga means with attachment, na, with love you are doing it. Here you are doing according to rules. Make sense?
So yeah, that I understand. But then the slide showed that this is one level, that is another level.
Yeah.
What was?
So Vaidhi sadhana is at one notch below Raganuga sadhana. That is why it came.
Okay.
That means if you see the Panchopasana, there is, what shall I say, Durga, then there is Saurya, the Ganapatya, Shiva, then there is the Vishnu worshipped as a Devata. Please remember, that is one level. Vishnu worshipped as a Devata. Then there is Sampradayic Vishnu worship, okay, as Lakshmi Narayan. And then finally there is Bhava, with Raga you worship the Lord. So like that. These are the different levels he's talking about. Right? Yeah, Balram Nitai Prabhu. Yeah.
Yes, Vadi. So I want to ask questions about two sets of people. One, devotees who are already practicing, and then the outside people who are new and whom we want to preach. So the first one for devotees. So because we have been hearing this, the greatness of and the highest position of the evolution of Krishna consciousness, that this is the highest stage of evolution. So we are theoretically convinced. I'm talking about the devotees who have been practicing for many years. Now, when we encounter this information, uh, it's very difficult to accept that I am at a lower level. Aspiration is at the higher level, but I am at a lower level. Then how do I progress from here? And how does the Bhagavad Gita comes into play, Nishkam Karma Yoga and the Yagyas and the activities which we need to perform along with our sadhana bhakti? How do we integrate this? Because I find it very challenging to accept that, okay, I am at a lower level, that I've been given this highest aspiration. Yes, it is at the lower level, but within Krishna consciousness itself, there are ways you can move from one level to higher level. So I want to understand how Bhagavad Gita and the Nishkam Karma Yoga will help us, because I'm having some intuition that, yeah, Bhagavad Gita is perhaps made us to go from these levels only to the higher levels. So how we can integrate the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita with this Panchakosha, evolution, understanding, and the different worshippers. And it's not only about being the worshipper. All across the world also, people may not be having these forms, right, of Shakta, of Shiva, but then they may themselves be in that category at
Yes.
that level.
Bhaktivinoda says that also. Even other religion people, they may be in one of these categories only, because these are levels of consciousness. They're not necessarily forms, he says. Yeah. Okay, yeah, coming to the Bhagavad Gita, see, the Gita, I feel always is very special because it integrates things in a very special way. So, for example, the Gita doesn't talk about giving up karma, right? It doesn't talk about giving up, right? It only talks about doing it without attachment. The Nishkama part has been emphasized by Krishna. So one advantage I see, one primary advantage I see of the Gita's position is that you are encouraged to do as per your nature, but do it as a matter of duty, because of which at one level you don't tend to be fruitive because consciously you're supposed to not do it for enjoying the fruit. But at the same time, because you have been encouraged to act as per your nature, there is a fulfillment in that. Okay, there is a fulfillment in that. Okay. So one thing about the Gita is Krishna constantly says that all types of yajna, dana, tapa, nothing is to be given up. Okay, nothing is to be given up. So for example, if you see, even if you see Krishna himself, he did aradhana to the sun god, right? He does his tarpana daily, the sandhya. If you see the Krishna book also, and if you see the Mahabharat war also, you will see this, that Krishna is offering water to the sun god 3 times a day. Okay, and even in the Mahabharata, it is very clear that even during the war, they would take a break in the Sandhya time to offer water to the sun god and do all that. But they didn't do that. But Krishna teaches through the Bhagavad Gita that those actions need to be done, but you don't do it for that benefit per se. You do it because it ought to be done. Okay, so that's a very interesting position, because so this means that you worship the sun god by offering water. I'm just taking this example because that is what you see in the Mahabharata, where the Pandavas and Krishna and even Lord Rama, you see in the Ramayana, they also do this. So they're doing all that, but at the same time they are not doing that simply thinking that I am doing this because I want power from the sun god. There, the understanding in Niskama Karma Yoga is I am supposed to do it. Every human being in the world is supposed to do these things. So I will do it as a matter of fact. Okay. So even, if you extend that idea there, at least Krishna's idea of even worship of the Devatas, if you remember, we spoke about it when we spoke about 4.25, where Krishna speaks about worship of Devatas also as a type of Karma Yoga only. So how does that become Karma Yoga? That means a person at that particular age. So just like you would see in Krishna book also, you would see, or you would see with all these characters, whenever they had any marriage, they would go to the Devi temple only. Even Krishna kidnapped Rukmini from one Devi temple only, I believe, correct? Because they had to go to that Devi temple. So the idea is that because that act of marriage is connected to enjoyment, pleasure, etc., in all these traditions, they would have some Devi to whom they were connected. So they would go there, offer respects to her. Okay, so all this is to be done in that Nishkama Bhavana. Okay, that means you're not doing this just thinking that I want the Kama, but you're doing this thinking that it ought to be done. So I will do it. Okay, because it has to be done as per the Vedic injunction. So I continue to do it. So in that mood, when one does, I find it quite interesting because those needs also get fulfilled. And at the same time, because you are very consciously approaching these rituals or worship with the idea that I'm not doing it for the pleasure, but I'm doing it because the Supreme Lord is satisfied by all these sacrifices, austerities, and activities. One is safe as well. So the Gita is indeed very special, because the Gita and consequently the Pandavas' lives, which is exhibition of Gita in practice, integrates all this in an amazing way, where you cannot even say that, you will never even say that the Pandavas are Shakta or Saurya or whatever. But at the same time, they do all these actions because they need to be done by human society. Okay, so this is also how when I was going through Sripad Ramanujacharya's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, that is also how he explains. So he explains, for example, the Sandhya Vandana. A Vaishnava also does these things not because he wants benefit from the sun god, but he does this because Krishna has ordered in the Vedic scriptures it has to be done. So I will do it. Okay, I'm not doing it because I want a good body to enjoy or whatever. Consciously, I'm not doing it for that enjoyment, but I'm doing it because these are all instructions of the Vedas and I have to stand by them as long as I'm living in this world. So I find that position interesting because it integrates well with the society as well. As I said, in the society, so that's why all these festivals So even Navaratri, etc., everybody has to do it, right? I mean, if you see, Navaratri is a festival in India from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. Everybody actually follows Navaratri. Okay, though one may say that Navaratri is done specially for the Devi and Saraswati Puja, etc. But then that is part of Grihastha Dharma, because there are children, there are so many people, and so that energy has to be connected too. But I would say, as a practicing spiritual person, as an aspiring bhakta, internally, even if I'm engaged in all these things, I may celebrate Navaratri, I may do Saraswati Puja because my children are there at home and I need to get connected to good education, etc. But the aspiration, at least in the inner core, we should keep it nishkama. Okay, so this is how we can actually bring Gita into picture. This is the second part of what you asked. The first part of what you asked, I do agree with it. That is why, the first part of what you asked, if you remember, was that when we hear that this is the highest and I am at the lowest, we feel bad. This is certainly an issue. That is why knowledge in our traditional system was given very gradually only to people. Knowledge was also considered very secret or confidential. Krishna also repeatedly says that this knowledge is confidential and it should be given only to some people. It is supposed to be given only to my devotees, etc. But in today's world, what happens is we have access to everything. So everybody knows that the highest goal is Gopi, Bhava and all that. But then they are simply not there, right? So they are at some other level only. So that there is this internal conflict or this feeling that, array, I'm here, etc. So I actually feel that the Gita's platform is much more, it integrates things very nicely, because while Gita encourages us to come up to Sarvadharman Parityajya, but at the same time, it emphasizes, the karma part in the Gita is never given up per se. As in, only the desire for fruitive actions is to be given up. But the action is never given up in the Bhagavad Gita, which is why I find that a very safe and ideal position for everybody. Does that make sense?
Yes, Guruji. So now about preaching to the new people, when we know this concept that they are at a certain level, so and then Bhagavad Gita, its focus is like is dharma. Shraddha is also there, but primary focus of Bhagavad Gita is dharma. Now, how do we integrate this understanding with our existing preaching of Krishna consciousness to them? Because we know that by understanding, we are also at different level. They are also at different level. They are not there. So we give them information, let them make their choice. Tell them, okay, these are the gradations, and this is the highest level of evolution, and you make your choice wherever you are. But at the same time, if we need to remain connected to them, and they also need to connect it to dharmic knowledge, they may not be able to accept that highest form of Shraddha, but dharma is something definitely we should be continuing to teach or rather discuss with them. So how do we balance this dharma and Shraddha and their level?
Yeah, Prabhuji, see what happens now as an institution, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, which is very clearly Prabhupada had that 7 goals of ISKCON. If you read, he was very clear that he wanted to teach this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's process of Sankirtanam as the primary, means of education through the ISKCON as a body, right? So since we are, since many of us may be preaching in a particular organized temple system or structure, we have to obviously align to that, because that's the goal of the institution. Okay, the goal of the institution is primarily to teach love of God as taught by Sri Chaitanya. Okay, so this has to be very clear, because that is how the structure is through which you are doing whatever you are doing. Okay, having said that, each of us may also be connected to people in our own ways, which may not exactly be always under an institutional umbrella. Or to give a simple example, each of us may have to preach, or so to say, guide our children also, right? Or our family members in their life. Now, it is not necessary that your children, it is not necessary, I'm saying, that someone's children or their family members may take up to the highest process but Mahaprabhu gave without any other aspiration. Okay. So there you may have to give them according to their level as well, right? Because you can't simply say, there you cannot wear the institutional hat, right? You're a father to your children. So you'll have to see where they are and what they need and, give it at that level. Of course, if somebody can come up and practice pure devotion, in that mood and integrate with the Gita also nicely, that's great. Okay, so I feel that in any case, I feel that one thing very safe to do is preach the way the Bhagavad Gita presents things. Because the Gita certainly has, that's again, we're coming back to the point that I answered in the first question also, what you said. Because the Gita plays it very clear from the beginning, right? Nishkama is emphasized from the beginning. At the same time, it takes care of the need of your action also. Okay, so I think that that's an amazing platform where anybody can be preached to. Okay, both within the institution and outside the institution. Because we stand for the Bhagavad Gita. Does that make sense?
Yes, Guruji. Thank you.
Yeah, last question. I think someone has the raise up. Who was that? Okay, there's no question. Oh, there is one. Yeah, please go ahead, Prabhu.
Yeah, so actually, yeah, I was initially asking, like thinking about this question, but yeah, later I guess some part you answered. So thanks a lot for this wonderful presentation. So I could see like maybe how different stages you mentioned, and then, so my question was about the worship. So one way, like you mentioned about the Saurya Dharma, so where somebody is doing Surya Namaskar or somebody is doing sun worship. So one aspect I find like, if somebody is doing Surya Namaskar or maybe some yoga asanas, so like actually one gets good health. But other way around, we say like Surya worship, okay, doing 3 Sandhya or this thing. So I think like one is aspect which may help to develop really good health. One aspect is doing worship. So I think like there it gets disconnected from the actual purpose, I felt. So
that is actually what has happened. We have secularized Surya Namaskar. That means in modern age, what we have done is we have made it secular. We call it Surya Namaskar, lekin Surya usme aate hi nahi hai. Are you getting the point? There is no conscious. We say हम बोलते हैं सूर्य नमस्कार बोलते हैं उसमें सब लोग बोलते हैं मैं 10 सूर्य नमस्कार करता हूँ करके. But there is that conscious understanding that this is for the sun doesn't exist. My point is, if somebody really wants good health, etc., being connected to the sun in that way, there is no problem per se in that. Okay, because that's the reality. आप सूर्य नमस्कार बोल रहे हो ना, फिर वही तो हुआ ना, आपका प्लेटफॉर्म वही है फिर. Because you're concerned about protecting your body, and Krishna has created a system. There is a sun god who is there, right? You connect to him. Connecting to him is through the mantra, through that ritual, through that asana, everything, and you get it, right? So my point is, it is also safe to do it in Nishkama Bhavana. That means I will do these things because they are to be done. That's it. So, I'm offering water to the sun god daily, or I'm, doing the Surya Namaskar, or even if I know some of these mantras, I may use it. Okay. Not necessarily that because I want to have a good health. Even if tomorrow the health is not good, am I going to stop Surya Namaskar? Thinking that I have a health achani, because it must be done. That's what they have said. Our sages have asked us to lead a regulated life, get up early, do these kind of things. So I will do it. That's it. So I think that so if you act on the Nishkama platform of Bhagavad Gita, you are in line with Gita also, and you are doing whatever has to be done also. So I find that more safe. And at this point, what you said, I hope what I said made sense, right? हमने उसको secular कर दिया. We removed that whole thing from it.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, Hari Bol, thank you everyone. Yes, thank you very much. La Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. I will share the slides. I'll share the slides with all those who attended the class. So I just took an attendance. I'll just share that because I didn't want it to just go randomly. So all those who were there, I just took an attendance. I'll share it with all of you on individual WhatsApp. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. La Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhaktivinoda.